This is Tim.
I'm Mulele.
And this is Critiquing Comics. Welcome to Critiquing Comics. This is Tim with Mulele in Tokyo. I hope my speech sounds okay. I'm having some tooth issues today with some swelling, so it might be affecting my diction, but how's it going?
I'm doing pretty well. A little bit rainy outside, so not the best weather, but still.
Yeah. Okay. So this time we're finishing up going over the pitch page from Irrational Comics, where every year they get the work of 5 budding comics writers. For each writer, like the first 8 pages of their story will be illustrated, and then they put it up on a web page, and people vote which one they are most interested in seeing more of. We talked about all 5 comics last year also. And now, of course, by the time we're recording this, the voting is long since ended, but it takes a while to get through all these. So the last 2 today. First of all, we have The Goods, that's Goodes, by L.J. Bell, who is from or a member of the Boston Comics Roundtable, which is a collective that's popped up on Deconstructing Comics before. I don't remember his name specifically, but I certainly know something about the group. Now, on this one, I didn't read the text intro very thoroughly. I got some stuff from it, but then I kind of skipped part of it and went straight into the comic. But the comic is about this kid named Jeremy, whose parents have gotten divorced, or are getting divorced, or have gotten divorced. They're living separately. And Jeremy has built superhero robot versions of his parents. And so at the beginning, we see the robots, saving the city from a giant koala, and then they go to the car that Jeremy and a chauffeur are waiting in. And now, since I hadn't read the text very thoroughly, I didn't get that the parents were, or the superheroes were, robots. And now, hopefully, ideally, the comic will tell you that without you having to read the text intro, because theoretically that won't be there. There's a panel where Jeremy seems to have like a smartphone or some kind of remote control that he's controlling the robots with, and I didn't understand what he was doing in that panel. He could have been just as easily like taking a picture of them. I really wasn't sure what to do with that panel until I got a couple pages further in, and then, okay, so these are robots, actually. I mean, maybe it should have been a little more obvious to me, but I just wasn't interpreting some things quite correctly. Well, why don't I'll let you talk. What do you think of it?
I never read the blurb at the top.
Okay.
Everything should be contained within the comic page.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't have to read anything about the writer or his intent or any of that stuff. So I don't read that at the beginning of the comic, and sometimes, most of the time, I don't read it afterwards either. I even skip it when it's in a printed book, when there's like some notes from the author. No, if you can't put it all in the comic, then you're missing something. But for this comic, I didn't have a problem with the boy being in the panel on the first page, playing on his iPhone. I kind of ignored it and didn't realize that they were robots. Now looking back at the first page again, they do seem to have a kind of gloss on their faces, but still, it's not enough for me to understand that they're robots. Because it does kind of coincide with the artistic style enough that it could be just stylistic affectation. So I kind of ignored that bit. And then when we got to the car scene, it's kind of revealed that they are robots. Actually, when they finally get to the hideout. But
yeah, then it's clear once they get to the hideout and he's fixing them.
Yeah. So at that point, okay, I kind of understand what that is. And then we see his real mother, who is actually a little bit older and in a wheelchair and all of this stuff. And then he has to go meet his father. And the big reveal is that his father is a super scientist who made the koala that was being beaten up at the beginning. It's kind of on the nose metaphor for how kids deal with their parents' divorces. And I thought it was cute, but it doesn't really point towards anything else. And so where does it go from here? What is the kernel that develops into a overarching plot?
Okay, well, yeah, since you didn't read the text intro, that's interesting, because I wanted to bring that up, because even though I did read the text intro, I didn't feel like these 8 pages really got to the point enough. There's one panel on page 7 where it's the second panel. There's a silhouette of a guy in a car saying, "There's the kid."
Yeah.
Well, according to the text intro, the kid gets kidnapped. And that's the story. And I really felt like, even though I knew that, I knew that and I saw that panel and I knew what it was doing there, but for these 8 pages, that's been kind of our guiding philosophy on talking about these, how well did they use the 8 pages? I thought he really needed the kidnapping to happen in the 8 pages.
Yeah. I did see the panel. I read those words. It meant almost nothing to me. And hearing that he gets kidnapped later, that kind of doesn't work for me. It really should, you're right, be in these 8 pages. And actually, the actual act of kidnapping the boy on page 7 or even on page 8 would have done a little bit more here. It almost feels like that panel is an add-on rather than an actual planned plot drop or plot reveal. So yeah, I kind of feel like it's not quite there yet. It's missing that one bit of solidifying, crystallizing plot announcement.
Yeah, and I think, well, from looking at these last 2 pages, I think, he's going to see his dad, and he's at the lab, but he needs to be buzzed in.
Yeah.
And the dad says, "No, I'll come out. Wait 2 minutes. I've got a lot to clean up here." And we see the giant koala robot in the background. But that last page, it's one panel.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that while Jeremy is waiting those 2 minutes is when he's going to get kidnapped. So, I mean, I think if he'd used that last page more efficiently, he could have gotten it in. Maybe just cut out a few other things elsewhere that didn't need to be and not make that last panel take up a whole page. We could have gotten the kidnapping in, and then we'd have a better idea of what this is about.
Yeah, actually, that last page, being a splash page, there is no action there. It's just a still shot of his father on the phone with the giant koala behind him. And what we get from this is father talking to his son, giant koala with a neck brace in the background and some lab equipment. It's very plainly drawn, and it doesn't seem to be really missing anything. But yeah, absolutely, this could have been done in about a third of the space. And in the rest of that, you could have had the kidnapping.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, looking at the panels above, there's a lot of open space there where they're just kind of like, the artist is kind of hanging out on the page. He's not really forcing some pacing here. So it does feel kind of lackadaisical, and then just kind of shoehorns in this one plot point and then finishes on a kind of grandiose picture, but utterly, ultimately meaningless page, because this shot is not the plot. This shot is the reveal that his father is the super scientist who made the giant koala. Maybe no nefarious intent, but it just got out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of weak in that way.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. It should have been much tighter there.
Okay, finally we have Undergrown, and this is by Julian Dominguez. I can't pronounce Spanish very well. I suppose I should say Julian Dominguez. And this is, he says in the text intro, did you read this one? The text intro? No? Okay.
Never read them.
So he was inspired by a TV show he saw about what would happen to the world if there were no longer any people on it.
Mm-hmm.
So in the story, I mean, it's that 21st century buzzword, post-apocalyptic, and for some time, we don't know how long, and I don't know if the comic even actually says this. I think you don't know it if you haven't read the text intro, which is kind of a problem. But people have, for some unspecified length of time, been living underground. And while they've been underground, life has mutated on the surface, and wolves have gotten huge and whatever. And what we see in the 8 pages is a couple of characters who have a van, which somehow still works and they have fuel for. And they're driving around on the surface and being chased by giant wolves and so forth. Now, thinking about the premise, I thought, well, okay, no people on the surface. I suppose the life that's on the surface, especially if there'd been like a nuclear apocalypse or something, would evolve. But what about the effects of living underground for some decades on humans? Wouldn't the humans change too? And I didn't really see any evidence that the humans have changed at all. Other than, and this might just be an art problem, I'm assuming it is, but one of the characters, well, the van falls in this big crevasse, and the driver has to jump out of it. He's holding onto a branch that's about 10 feet below the edge of this sheer cliff, and in the very next panel, he's gotten to the top of the cliff somehow. I don't know what he held on to climb it. There's no rope visible. Maybe he has some kind of superpower he's developed to fly up to the top of the cliff or something.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of there's a scene in Cagliostro's Castle, the Lupin the Third movie, where a similar situation happens, where Lupin has to rescue this girl, and in doing so, yeah, you can see how he works it out. And I don't know, I think there's like something there that could have been used here, which would have helped this panel a lot. And not, or help this page a lot, and not use too many panels. But I can't help but feel that, again, same problem. A lot of real estate is used kind of building character or doing some dramatic points, but not really getting to the pertinent information of the story.
Yeah.
So the bit about it being a post-apocalyptic, life is mutated on the surface, and humans don't get up to the surface very often. None of that is in the comic itself.
Mm-hmm.
You're just presented with these people who are out hunting these weird animals. And I kind of get that these are humans, and it is maybe the future, maybe an alternate reality. I'm not quite sure. They've got a kind of standard van with fantastic creatures. So I don't know, maybe not sci-fi. It's kind of hard to understand what that is. But they do kind of seem to understand how the crystal wolves hunt and are surprised by, what happens at the end, them being trapped by the wolves. So it seems that the characters are kind of aware of the situation, but wholly unprepared for it. And I don't know what the writer is pointing at. Evolution, something else happening. And again, there's no plot beyond this that is kind of inferred here that I can tell. So it's not really an intro to a bigger story. This is the story. And this is how they died. that would actually
the whole story is actually 10 pages.
yeah. That would be about right here. It doesn't seem to lead to a bigger thing. What it is creating a situation rather than setting up a direction. So yeah, there's the situation. Yeah, we understand how these people are dealing with this situation in the moment, but there's nothing telling us what's going to come in the rest of the story. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of becomes the problem. And it's the same problem that the last one had, although in this one it's a little bit worse because there seems to be no mention of it, not even one panel that I can discern as being, this is what the comic is going to be about in the next 50 pages.
Yeah, even from reading the text intro, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
He doesn't really give us much information there either, just sort of, the setup, the concept.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do kind of think that perhaps some of the writers are not quite as clear on how to tell just a touch of the story and give the information that they need. And to be honest, I sometimes have the same problem with my story. Sometimes I know exactly where it needs to go and I just go there. Other times I just jump in, start telling a story about a situation and a guy, and then it develops into something really crazy. So you're kind of wading through the work to get to this punchline. And then you hear the punchline, like, okay, I guess I kind of see where the setup was, but giving only the meandering beginning bit, it's kind of hard to see it. Mm-hmm. There has to be something else to pull you in, and here there is not. It seems a little too self-contained.
Did you notice the voting results at the bottom of the page?
I did see that, yeah, and it seemed to go in. Let's see.
Well, number 3, Pantheon's End, was the winner with almost half the votes.
Oh, the poll is closed. Oh, yeah, I see.
Right.
So yeah, it's the clear winner.
Yeah, and then the numbering after that is number 1, number 2, number 4, and number 5.
Right.
Which made me kind of wonder if being at the bottom disadvantaged these last two. But then I looked back at last year's pitch page, and number 5 was the winner last year. That was Wanderer, the one about the vampire type thing in the post-apocalyptic future and kind of Dune type thing. Mm-hmm. So I guess that the the order that they're put on the page is not a factor. Yeah, last year number 1 was had the fewest votes, but so apparently it's just a coincidence that number 4 and number 5 this year were the worst vote getters. I don't really understand why Pantheon's End got the most votes. I think I would have voted for Osaka Mime myself.
Yeah, I would have voted for Osaka Mime as well. But looking at some of the comments below that, it does kind of talk about how the dialogue in the diner was not that good. And perhaps there's something to that. That it was a little too atypical of those situations, and maybe they wanted a little bit more of a twist on the dialogue itself. I was looking strictly at structure and plot and setup, and those points were all hit extremely well in Osaka Mime compared to the other ones.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of problems with the setup for Pantheon's End, but who knows? It is of course the only. Actually, no, it's not. That's not even true. I was going to say it was the only superhero book, but no. Concept for the goods also is a hero thing. But yeah, I would say for myself, Pantheon's End is one that I liked the least. Because it seems to be more of a hero smash concept rather than something that is a little bit is going to turn the concept on its head. I just don't see it coming. But who knows? Maybe the writer's got something to say in the rest of the book, and the actual full book will be something much more interesting. Just for these 8 pages, it seems to be lacking a little bit. Wasn't the worst, but wasn't the best.
Man. So by the time you hear this, Mulele will have a new Kickstarter project up. So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, or at least I hope to. I'm still working out the details of it, but last year I released in 4 parts a series called Yakai, Night Mystery. The idea was to coincide with each Comedia Comic Con in Tokyo. They're 4 a year, and so it was a kind of a short 20-page per issue ghost story. But the thing was, it was a real story, a true story, that I actually went to with my friend to these areas described in the book and experienced something a little bit supernatural or unexplainable, and then documented all that stuff in the stories. So there are 4 locations that we go to in the books, and stuff gets a little bit weird towards the end, and it's basically why I swore off ghost hunting, and I don't like going to parks at night anymore. But there's some nice stories and some nice kind of life lessons learned in these stories. And so for these books, I'm collecting all of them. They were in Japanese, of course, because they were for a Japanese market, but I'm collecting all of them into an English single volume, and I'm going to kickstart that on March 5th. That's the plan. Baked into the Kickstarter is I'm going to draw a collection of illustrations that will be posted during the Kickstarter posted and most likely drawn during the Kickstarter. So in total, there are 60 illustrations. So it'll be 2 a day going up with some time-lapse video of me drawing the stuff as well, to kind of promote the comic. But at the end of the Kickstarter, I'll pair all of the illustrations with a book and send them out to backers. So the illustrations will be sent out at random, but basically there's the book tier, which is about $20, and then there's the book and illustration tier, which is a little bit more, about $10 more, maybe 15. And so the illustrations themselves are very cheap, but they're quality. Drawn from art, and in 2 colors, black and blue. The comic is also black and blue, so I wanted to kind of keep it as a set. But yeah, basically that's it. It'll go up March 5th, and it will be finished 30 days after that. The stories are done, everything's translated, it's ready for camera, and so unlike my last Kickstarter, which took me quite a while to complete and send out to everyone, the idea is that I'll send this out to everyone by the beginning of May. So basically, you jump into the Kickstarter, you pledge or back, and then you get your book.
So when you get funded in the Kickstarter, well, other way around, the Kickstarter ends, you get funded, and then you go to the printers. Is that how it works?
Yeah, basically. I've already talked to the printer. The printer is set. We're just waiting for the funds from the Kickstarter. And there are some stretch goals worked in if it goes that far. And I'll announce them if we get close to that. But, well, I mean, if we just make it, then no stretch goals, but I'm kind of hoping a few of them at least, because they're kind of fun. But the idea of it is to be something quite simple and with a very fast turnaround. So basically, these 4 stories that I've published in Japanese, plus some commentary on each of the stories from both myself and the my co-writer Noriko Tamura, who actually went with me on all of these adventures and was also scared shitless. But hopefully, for me and for her, it's actually quite a fun book. Scary experiences aside, when it came down to actually write the material, I mean, we both love these kinds of kind of ghost stories, and the fact that they're true for us is actually even more enjoyable. And you can see Noriko and I freaking out on quite a few pages.
Okay. And at the end, when I edit this, I'll put in any updates that need to be put in.
Okay.
If you'd like us to critique your comic, send a PDF of it or a link to it, and we'll critique it on the show. Send it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We'll read at least 30 pages of it, and then we'll talk about it. So till next time, this is Tim.
And Mulele.
And thanks for listening to Critiquing Comics. Mulele's Kickstarter project is live now. Find the link in the show notes for this episode at deconstructingcomics.com. Mulele is on Twitter @MuleleRedux, and I'm at Decon Comics. Next week on Deconstructing Comics, the topic is Peter Bagg's 90s classic Hate, and the panel is Kumar, Tom Spurgeon, and me. See you then.